Hello, it is Greg from Microsoft Hates Greg. Today we're going to be talking about what's kind of like my most favorite subject and my least favorite subject to talk about regarding DAX, and that is the time intelligence. So it's my most favorite topic to talk about because I've always found that talking or writing about things that annoy me is really a fertile ground for humor. And it's my least favorite because my personal feelings are that the time intelligence functions in DAX should just be never be talked about and just be forgotten. But if you have any doubts about how I feel about DAX's time intelligence functions, you can read my community blog article to Bleep with Time Intelligence, where I equate time intelligence to the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And in that article, I kind of lay out my complaints with time intelligence functions, and I give equivalents for all of them, essentially. All the time intelligence functions, I have equivalents for them that I've posted out in the quick measures gallery. Now, some of these have made it into Mushkookum, and we'll go through them today, a couple of them. And to use them, where you're going to find the time intelligence equivalent functions, you might think that I would have classified them under date intelligence, since despite their names of being time intelligence, they don't deal with hours and minutes and seconds. They actually deal with months, days, and years. So dates, not time. But I didn't put them under date intelligence just for the simple fact that I just don't find them very intelligent. So then you might think that, well, I had to put them under time and duration. But again, they don't deal with time and duration. They deal with days, days and months and years, not hours, minutes, and seconds. So I didn't feel that that was a good place to put them either. So where you will find them is I have a whole category here of my to hell with. And these are functions that annoy me. And I create equivalents for them and I name them to hell with whatever the function name is. So the ones we're going to be covering today are to hell with end of month, to hell with end of year, to hell with start of month, to hell with start of year. And we're mostly going to be covering just the start of month and the start of year, but you'll see the other ones are basically equivalent. It's just whether you use min or max. So to use these, you select your date. You're going to want a date column, and again, there's no checking in Mushkookum. I don't check whether or not you picked a text column or a numeric column. But for these, you're going to want to use date columns. And then, of course, you can pick your to hell with end of month, and you can pick an aggregation of minimum or maximum. Because again, it doesn't make sense to sum a date, so I only provide the maximum minimum. Generate your DAX. And as you can see here with end of month, in the difference between my equivalents for the time intelligence functions and the DAX time intelligence functions is mine actually do what the function says it's supposed to do, which is get the end of the month, right? The DAX, and we'll get into this a little later, the DAX equivalents or the DAX standard functions, they don't actually do what they say they do. And I'll explain that here in a bit. As you can see with end of month, I'm just grabbing either the maximum or the minimum of your date column, and then I'm using EOMonth function to return, the date with at the current, essentially 0 means current offset of 0 months. So it just figures out what the end of the month is. End of month, EOMonth function is a great function. Similarly with to hell with end of year, if I choose that one, generate the DAX for that, I grab the maximum or minimum of your date, and then I grab the year of that date. And since years end on December 31st, I can just plug in 12 for the month and 31 for the day. Similarly with start of month and start of year, I generate the DAX for that. I grab the date, I figure out what the month is, I figure out what the year is, and I return the date with the year and that month, and month start on the first of the month. Start of year is even simpler. Grab the date, get the year of that date, return 1/1 because years start on January 1st. Okay, so let's dig into, and I built a Power BI file here, and I'll give you an example of what's going on. So I built this kind of unique date table where I'm returning. So this is September. This is January 2nd, and I'm ending it a day early. So January 30th instead of 31st. And I build one of those for each month, and then I actually give a year down here for 2022, which starts on the proper January 1st and January 2nd, and December 31st. Sorry, January 1st and December 31st. So to kind of explain what I mean by they don't actually do what they say they do, I built this quick little visual here. And oh, by the way, I've got some helper columns where I've grabbed the month num for sorting, my day, and my year, right? So I've built this little graphic here, this little matrix, and I've got in here my month and my day, start of year. Yeah, well, I'm not sure. Oh, I got to drill up. Hang on just a second. All right, here we go. That's what I wanted to show. Here we go. So here I've got January, February, March, April, May, June, July, all the way to all my months that I've got in the year 2021. And as you can see, with the start of year function, and start of year is defined by this formula. So start of year, you feed it a column of dates, and it returns you back a single row table, which in itself is weird. If I wanted a table, I would return a table. I don't need my functions telling me, that I want the start of the year, but it's going to return it as a table. That's just weird. So that's number one. So anyways, to get the actual date that's out of that, I just use a max X across that and grab the maximum. Since it's a one row table, it doesn't matter if I use max X here or min X. As you can see, it's not actually returning the start of the year. What it's really doing, the start of year function, is it's returning the minimum of the date column in the current context, ignoring your months and quarters, essentially. So essentially what it's doing is really, all the start of year function really is just it's a fancy filter function, or as I would call it, an obfuscated filter function, where it's actually changing context on you. And I have a problem with functions that change the context for me. Context is difficult enough to deal with. I don't need my functions doing it for me. So that's just yet another complaint against time intelligence functions. And the start of the quarter is very similar. As you can see, it's not grabbing the actual start of the quarter of an annual calendar. And just be clear, time intelligence functions are of no use in a fiscal calendar. So they only can be used with an annual calendar, a standard calendar, if you will, which is weird since Microsoft's own calendar runs from July to July. So they already use a custom fiscal calendar. So I don't know what they were thinking in creating functions that were only good for standard calendars, but I digress. But as you can see, then it's what this quarter is doing, start a quarter, and the start a quarter function is very similar. Use the start a quarter function. What it's really doing is just removing the month context and figuring out, that the quarter starts on either January or April or July or October, and returning the minimum date within the quarter. Same thing with start of month. Start of month, exact same formula. Start of month, feed it a table, it returns a table, single row table. You grab the max X of that, and you get the minimum of the date for that month. And you can see this if we drill down, and we'll do that in a second. Now, where I want to start to get into the nitty gritty of this is with first date. And I call the first date function and the last date functions, and you can see I'm using them here. First date, feed it a table, returns a one row date table. I call first date and last date, they're sort of like celery jello to me. Okay, and to explain this, you have to understand that. So somebody has to come up with the bad idea that is celery jello, right? And then to understand the true lunacy behind it, you have to realize that just wasn't created in a vacuum. Like 2 or 3 other people at least had to sign off on it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, celery jello, that's a great idea." So anyway, first date and last date to me is celery jello. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So if we drill into this, you can see the difference between first date, start of month, start of quarter, and start of year. First date here for every day. Now in January, it's first date's returning me the minimum value, right? The value on that day, because only January 5th is in context, right? So first date's always going to return to you. It's just a min function. Okay, that's all it is. It's a min function, and it's exactly equivalent, where I have this just use min. So it's exactly equivalent to just taking your min function and putting it in curly brackets, right? Because that returns a one-row table, which includes the min of the date column. So again, I don't know why Microsoft found it necessary to create a function that is just min, but I'm going to return it as a table, as a one-row table. It's celery jello, right? So if I wanted as a table, I would just do this, or what I really want as my first date is I just want the actual date, right? So even easier, I'll just use min. It returns the minimum date within the column, right? So, but you can start to see the difference between first date, which is your minimum date, and then start of month, right? As these days go up, all start of month is doing is getting rid of the day context and returning the minimum date value in context of a month, ignoring day. If that makes any sense. And as you can see, start a quarter, it is the same thing. As we get into April, and that it will return 4.2 for every day in that quarter. And same thing all the way down. Start of year within any month, any quarter is going to return the minimum date within ignoring month and day and quarter, right? So you can see here, I just created these measures. I just created the standard start of month. This is exact code that Mushgookum generates. The start of month actually returns the actual real start of the month, regardless. The real start of the month for January is January 1st. And the real start of the year for 2021 is January 1st. It is not January 2nd, which is what the DAX time intelligence functions return. Now, so that's a difference between my versions of the time intelligence equivalent functions that I have for Microsoft Hates Greg's quick measures and the actual real ones. Now, if you want to get the real ones, right, the real equivalents, I've got those over here as well. So as you can see, let's say start of year 2. I don't know what I just screwed up. That's okay. I think for some reason this thing switched. I told it to be short date, and it's not for some reason. I don't know how that happened, but I'm getting some weird behavior with the November version, quite honestly. That's okay. We'll ignore that for right now. Start of year 2. Start of year 2. So this is what I mean by when I say all start of year is just really start of month as well, end of month, start of quarter, end of quarter. All of them are really just filter clauses and using min or max. So what really start of year is doing is it's changing the filter context on you. So here I use all to break out of my current context that includes like the month and things like that. And then I grab the year of the min and I make sure it's equal to, and so I'm filtering all. I'm taking the min value, I grab the year of it, make sure it's equal to the year of any of those dates. So now I've got a filtered table inside here, which is all of the dates from that date column. They're in the year, the same year as my current context of my minimum date value. And then all I do is I use min-x to then grab the minimum of that date. And as you can see, start of year 2 returns exactly the same thing as start of year all the way down. Start of month is very similar. Start of month 2, year 2, we're just adding in, so it's the exact same as start of year 2, but I'm adding in, I'm making sure that I also have my month, right? So my month is taken into context or taken into account. So otherwise, it's the exact same process as start of year. So essentially, this is all start of year is, and start of month are just they're just fancy filter statements. And then if you like calculate right, I created a version here, start of year 3, where it's the same kind of concept. I calculate the min of the table of the date, and then I'm using a filter to make sure I'm only returning dates that fall within my quote unquote current year, if you will. And then you can see, that's for 2021. I've also got 2022, and it works, now these actually work because, I have the January 1st is in my table, and so these appear to they're going to return the first of the year. Even though that's technically not what they do. So that is kind of a breakdown of the hell will start a month, the hell will start a year, different equivalent formulas for start of year, start of month, start of quarter, first date, last date, and just realize that, everything I've dealt with here, I'm using min. You just flip that to max if you want the end of, essentially, for all of these things. There's going to be some additional time intelligence, quote unquote, videos that I'm going to post on this. We'll cover next day and previous day, which are just things you shake your head at. But that's all for this episode of Microsoft Hates Greg. Hope you've enjoyed it. Like and subscribe. Leave me comments. Tell me how much of an idiot I am for hating time intelligence functions. It's all good. See you next time.